So good day, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for coming onto this webinar. Just want to know that you can actually see the screen, so just give me a moment, please. Okay, so good morning. It's really lovely to speak with you today, and thank you so much for coming onto the call or onto the webinar. It's really great to have you. Can I just assess whether you are actually able to see the screen, please? Would you mind showing me in the box, in the little sort of question box? Okay, so I'm assuming then that you can see the screen, as nobody's come through to me. All right, so very, very warm welcome to all of you today. It's really fantastic to have you with me. Today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about essentially big bad bullies and how they can be dealt with at work and what's the best way to do it. So it's a really difficult conversation sometimes when I'm talking to people where they experience bullying at work. But the real reality of the situation is that it doesn't actually matter where we are or who we are or why we are. We all experience people who can be really difficult and also who can be particularly rude and not necessarily nice people to deal with. So this is really looking at, okay, so where are you right now? And would you like to, for example, be able to stand up for yourself all the time? Would you like to be able to appropriately deal with bullies? Be able to deal with them in such a way that they don't bully you or anybody really any longer. And I'll talk a little bit more about that, like regards to bullying and how people who bully are really seeking power and control. And would you like to be in a position where bullies don't come near you? In other words, they know that you're not a pushover, so they really stay away from you. And that's really what you want, whether they're your boss, your colleague, somebody in the community. I think when you're dealing with bullying, it's always about learning how to stand up for yourself, have a voice, learning how to have a voice so that if you see treatment, for example, that's unacceptable, just don't take it. Don't allow people to treat you badly. And I know it's often easier said than done, of course it is, but at the end of the day, if you don't have a voice, then how on earth are we going to be in a situation where you'll be able to deal with these sort of people, deal with them effectively, and specifically those who try to push you around. And I think the problem many of us experience is that, as I said when I started, bullies are everywhere and always will be. And I think the question remains, do we allow them to walk all over us or not? And I think one of the key things I see a lot on in terms of bullying in organizations is that if people don't stand up to bullies, then often it just becomes worse. And if it becomes worse, then, the fact is that bullying is really bad for your health, whichever way you look at it. And as I said, a big bad bully can cost you your health. If you're working with working with a bully, you're living in a relationship with one, or, you report to one, the fact is that bullying is bad for our health. And at some stage, we might actually need to walk away from this person and the situation in search of greater peace and ultimately, serenity. Last night I was working with a group of project managers and I was talking to them about leading with impact and giving them a couple of skills and tips, etc. And it was really interesting. So there were probably 40 people in the room, of which maybe 10 were women. And I was talking about the fundamentals of leadership. And what was interesting was that at the end of the forum, one of the women came up to me and said to me that she just feels absolutely exhausted in her work. And I tried to find out a little bit more. Anyway, she's been in this organization for 22 years. And she's been working with a man who's unpredictable, not very nice, and actually a bully. And I said to her, why on earth have you stuck up for 22 years with this person? And her comment was, well, I really love my job and I didn't want to walk away from the job. But the fact is now that I've got depression, I've got anxiety, I'm on pills and I have to leave. So what I'm saying with that particular comment, don't wait for bullying in your organization, for example, or even your relationship to get so bad that your health actually becomes a problem. Maybe it's time to see the bully through fresh eyes. How do you deal with these people? What do you say to them? And I'm really happy to give you the opportunity to have a one-on-one discussion with me, but really only if you're ready to take the action to truly, truly deal with a bully. and to find your voice and ultimately to stand your ground, regardless of what gender you are or regardless of where you work. Bullies are found across all sectors. So I think it's about realizing what we have to do with bullies and how we have to resolve issues with them. And at the outset, one of the real difficulties I think we often have is that if the bully is the boss, i.e. the CEO of the organization, you know what I say? If you're feeling unwell and if you're feeling stressed going to work and you're not enjoying yourself anymore, leave. Please don't stay in a place where you know that you can't really do much about the bullying, because the person bullying you is the person who's actually, the owner or the CEO of the organization. I think that you particularly then are in a sort of lose-lose situation. So the costs of workplace bullying to organizations is absolutely huge. It is so much. So absenteeism is costing the Australian economy $4.7 billion a year. $4.7 billion. Presenteeism is when people go to work but they're not really there, like their body arrives but their mind and their souls are elsewhere. So presenteeism is costing the Australian economy $6.1 billion. Compensation claims of $146 billion a year. I mean, these are staggering numbers. Each claim costs $115,000 to the organization, and each director, for example, if it shows up when directors are not looking after, the bullying issue in their organizations and ignoring them, they personally have to pay up to $100,000. Significantly more cost to an organization as a group. So it's a really, really big issue around what are we going to do about organizational bullies and how can we really, resolve this issue. So just a little bit about me. There's a lot of you on the line, and I know that most of you have met me, or some of you have, but not all of you. But who am I? My name is Karen Walsh. What do I do? I run a company called Pure Magic International Business Solutions, and we work all over Africa, Fiji, and Australia. I do lots of coaching. Probably I've got two areas of specialization, really. One will be leadership development and team development, and the other one is empowering women to thrive. So very involved in helping women become more confident and believing of themselves. I work in all types of organizations to help leaders and teams thrive, and obviously to stamp out unproductive behaviors and introduce, productive strategies and things that work into organizations. I do lots of writing, I'm a columnist, and I speak at lots of conferences, just generally like what I do. 2016, one of the CEOs I coached won the Australian CEO of the Year award, which was a really, really great thing for her, and I really admire her name. Her name is Viv Allenson. So, when we describe highly performing teams, what we're describing is a high-performance team is a team, for example, in the tasks area. So each organization or each team really has two different areas of a job. You, for example, on the line, when you are going to work, you're paid to do two different things. One is to do the job properly, so your tasks, rostering, accounts, business development, writing reports, whatever that is. And the other part of your role is to have good relationships. Actually, your company pays you to have good relationships. So the individuals and teams are working really well. And even, for example, if people get irritated with each other, which we all do from time to time, there's a process and there's a respect between these people to resolve issues. There's a culture of achievement of goals and support of each other. And a highly performing team has fun and they enjoy each other's company, lots of respect, and they stand by their team member. And very often when we are called into organizations, it's about the fact that they have a culture of toxicity and people not talking to each other. So that's part of our role, to go in and solve it. So a bully makes all the bad difference in your life, and I think it's an important thing. And coming back to highly performing teams, you cannot be a highly performing team if you are being bullied, or if you are the bully, or if some of the other people in your team are being bullied, because bullying really is unproductive. It makes people sick, as I said, and you can't be productive and efficient and outcomes focused if you're stressed and feeling under, pressure all the time. It's an awful environment in which to be raised. So a bully makes all the bad difference in your life, or not only raised, it's a bad environment in which to work. Bullying behavior is repeated, ongoing attempts to control or embarrass another. An example might be, your team leader telling you at work that you really are pretty useless at what you're doing. And at the end of the day, you might not be here. I mean, that's bullying behavior. Why would you speak to people so disrespectfully? Or it could be, for example, one of your staff members or even your colleagues come in and just ignore you. When we ignore each other or we don't greet each other, it's like we're 5-year-olds again in a kindergarten. But what I see is a lot of adults are big people, but they really are just the same 5-year-old kindergarten person. So bullying over time is life-threatening. Why? Because people suicide over bullying. If you think about the teens, and they're bullied on social media and Facebook, and they're made to feel revolting about themselves, and so they take their lives. This isn't something that's new to you, I'm sure. So I think what I'm trying to say here today is that bullying is a lot more serious than I think what a lot of people take it into account to be. And unless you learn to stand up to a bully, ladies and gentlemen, I promise you something, and that is that the controlling behavior will get worse. Bullying doesn't get better on its own. It has to be addressed, and it has to be resolved, and generally by the leader, the team or the organization. And as I said just now, if you've got a leader of an organization who's the bully, you have to really think about your mental and physical health and whether you want to stay there. So the basics of bullying behavior, I'm always asked this as a psychologist. The basis of bullying behavior is that bullies have an innate sense of insecurity or inadequacy. They feel they don't have the power, so they bully others to get that additional power. If you think about this, people who like themselves, people who feel good about themselves, warts and all, I mean, we've all got our, foibles, but people who really like themselves generally and feel confident in themselves and feel strong and resilient are not really people who are bullies. And why is that? Because they don't have to take their power from somewhere else. They stand in their own sunshine, they're able to do things well. It's really, I think, that bullying is a sense of inadequacy. So somebody doesn't feel good about themselves, or somebody might have like a group of people around them, and then what they do is they kind of gang up on somebody. So you do find groups of bullies, you do find solo bullies, but ultimately they are people who struggle with an innate sense of inadequacy and insecurity, really. If you think you can't deal with bullies, and I think this is an important question, then you won't. I think very much, it's often about having the attitude of, I can actually stand up to this person, and I don't need to be spoken to like this or treated in this way. So it's about thinking about, can you stand up to bullies? Absolutely. I don't want you to get off this line and think that you cannot, because you can. If you believe you're not assertive with them, then you probably are not. So then the thing to do is to learn how to be assertive. It's not really rocket science, but it's about learning how to stand up to somebody who's walking over your parade. If you allow them to dictate to you, they'll just continue doing it, because that's what bullies do. If you don't stand up to them, they will continue to control and manipulate you. And I mean, for those of you who are on the line, and there's quite a few on the line today, the reason why you are here is because I'm assuming some of you either have bullying experiences with people at home or people at work. You're probably not bullies yourselves because you're on here wanting to learn what you can do with bullies, but you might be. And ultimately, the thing is that bullies will control and manipulate you unless you stand up to them. So when we think about, what precisely is bullying behavior? It's ongoing and repeated behavior. So harassment and bullying are different things. Harassment is a one-off, somebody's done this thing to me, and bullying generally tends to be longer term, whereas harassing is shorter term. And what we know from it is that people who are bullying have behaviors of being rude or angry. They blame you, they ignore you. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, to be ignored is equally as in bullying as it is to be shouted at. Have you ever been into a working environment where you walk in and the whole team is there and it's like you're an invisible ghost? Nobody even greets you. Nobody even, acknowledges that you're there. That's very, very bullying. People who are impatient and demeaning all the time. Demeaning in terms of, putting their people down, not talking nicely to them. They're irritable with them. They sulk. Oh gosh, do I hate the sulkers. I find sulkers so difficult to be around. And why? Because it's just so not how I operate. I always think if you've got a problem, right, let's be big people and big bodies and big adults, and let's go into the coffee room and talk about it. It's not really rocket science, but many people are very uncomfortable with this. People who are attacking of others, people who also overload you with an intolerable workload. So you've got so much to do, you don't know how you're going to get out of it, and it's stressful. And interestingly enough, I'm going to share with you this, the research says that people who are underloaded. And what we mean by that is that most of their day they're sitting around not sure what to do because there's nothing to do. And so what happens then is that they feel worthless. They feel as if, well, why am I here? Nobody actually appreciates what I do or gives me stuff to do. So working too much or given too much work to do is bullying, but also given not enough work to do can be seen as bullying. So bullying is everywhere. I mean, if you think about the behaviors on the screen right now, you'll see them in the shopping center, you'll see them on the road, you'll see them in the home occasionally, but you might see them at work all the time. But at the end of the day, it's just unnecessary. And I think one of the key things with bullying is that it takes more energy to be nasty and mean as it does to be kind and nice. So, I think it's a really interesting thing when we talk about bullying. And at the end of the day, whichever way we land, bullying is a problem. Some of the scary stats, look at that. The most common forms of bullying and harassment are being sworn at, 37.2%. There you go, humiliated in front of others. 23.2% of people say they have. It's really scary stuff because at the end of the day, bullying is about what happens in relationships. And if we can't resolve what happens in our relationships, it's a really, difficult place and a scary place to be. And I think sometimes we don't really appreciate that. There you go. Women are more likely than men to be bullied and experience unwanted advances, unfair treatment because of their gender. There you go. It's all on the line. And I think it's an important point that we raise is that, is there an issue with gender diversity in bullying or gender difference? Yes, there is. It seems so. And then the last point I wanted to make is that Australian workplace bullying costs businesses and the economy a whopping $36 billion each year. I mean, that is extraordinary. That's just crazy stuff. So we talk here about 6 types of big bad bullies. Now, what do these people look like, and how do we deal with these? But before understanding how to deal with them, let's just look at them. Here we go, the always angry bully. Oh my gosh, they walk into the door in the morning and they scowl, and they skulk and scowl around the day. And what happens a lot of the time is that most of the team or most of the organizations, if this person's in a very high position, don't want to go near them because they know they're going to get an irritable response. They know they're going to get a frustrated reaction from this always angry bully. And I must tell you, they are horrible to work with or for. And I would say if you can't get on with them, please don't waste your time. You would get another position elsewhere, but also look for a manager or a leader who's a lot nicer than this always angry bully. The completely clueless bully. Oh my gosh. Well, this one's just bad, where they come into work and they're clueless. They leave things at home. They go to meetings. They forget things. They haven't got their diaries. They don't finish reports on time. They're not sure what to be doing. And it's a really difficult thing, particularly if these people are in leadership positions. Because if they're in a leadership position and they don't know what they're doing, or, for example, they are seen to be completely clueless by the people working for them, ultimately what happens is that you can also, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, get down-up bullying. There's different types of bullying. So up-down is normally from a boss to their people. But you can get bullying where you've got people who bully their boss because they don't value them or they don't respect them. And at the end of the day, often you will find when you say to people, why did you speak to your boss that way, or why do you treat them in that manner? They might say things like, well, they're clueless. They don't know what they're doing and we don't respect them. So completely clueless bosses are a problem. The ever-critical bully, oh, how boring, how exhausting. The ever-critical, boring bully, as I call them, is all about being critical of other people. What do you do? How do you do? Why haven't you done this properly? Why haven't you completed this? They're not people, for example, who would be admiring or validating of their staff. I was talking about this yesterday. I was running the day before with the City of Ryde Council and a program called Empowering Women to Thrive. And I see one of you's on the line. Hi there. And what we were talking about is bosses who are ever critical, can't say a nice word to anybody. And I think we all want to be nurtured, right? We all want to feel as if we're doing a good job and that we're validated as human beings. Why can't this person really be nice? I'll tell you why. Because they're ever critical across their life, probably. They were probably raised in a critical environment, and ultimately that's all they know. And so what they probably need is coaching, or certainly being spoken to by the leader of the organization. This is my worst kind of bully. I'm nice to your face and talk about you behind your back bully. You know why I don't like this bully? Because it's passive aggressive behavior. You never know what's going to come next. They grate your face. They'll tell you how much they like you. They love what you're wearing. They, great hairstyle. And then behind your back and in front of other people, she's just awful. She's incompetent. She doesn't know what she's doing. I don't know how he got to the top of the organization. Those kind of things, which is just awful behavior. And as I said when I started today, it's the kind of behavior you'll see in kindergarten. The totally disorganized bully is very difficult for team members is because they've never, they just haven't got a clear thinking pattern. They jump from topic to topic to topic, or they jump from project to topic to project, and they become very difficult to follow because you never know where they are leading you to. And if they're completely disorganized, ultimately what you've then got is a very disorganized team. And it's very difficult to work with a totally disorganized bully. The smiling assassin. Actually, the smiling assassin is probably the same as four, really. But I like to use the word assassin because I think that's what they do. That's what they are. They try to assassinate you. And somebody asked me this the other day, so give me an example. Well, it's not probably a typical example at work, although I can give you one, but I always think that the execution of John F. Kennedy was an assassin. Of course he was an assassin. We know that he was. But when I use this in context to a bully, this is what I mean, is that, for example, you can be in a team meeting and thinking, well, you get on really well with Sal, who's in your team. But in a team meeting when the leader says, right, now team, are there any comments? Sal might say, yes, I have a comment. How is it that, Karen, you didn't finish your project last week on time? And I look at Sal thinking, oh my gosh, where on earth did that come from? I didn't even see that coming. So they're nice to your face and they might have an issue with you, but they don't discuss it with you. Going back to John F. Kennedy, he had no idea where that bullet came from. He was dead before he knew what hit him. And, it's a bit of a macabre kind of analogy I'm drawing here, but they're the same things. They basically try and take you out without you even knowing what's going on. So these people here are not good people to work with. Now, the question is, fine, what do we do with them? Why do bullies continue? Why do they keep going? What is that about them? I think one of the things is that leaders sometimes don't know how to deal with bullies, and neither do their colleagues. So you've got a bully in a team. Let's say you've got John in a team of 6 and John's a bully, and we all report to Sam. Very often if I speak to Sam, Sam will say, I have no idea what to do with this. So what I'm hoping, Karen, is if I just ignore it, it'll go away. I promise you, ladies and gentlemen, it will never go away. But what I do also promise you, it will get worse unless you, as a leader or a colleague, know that, if you don't deal with it and resolve the issue sometimes, it's just going to get out of hand, and it always does. And all of the team hopes and prays and begs for them to leave the organization. Often there's no consequences for their behavior. Oh, it's okay, Karen, things will settle down and they'll get better. No, they won't. If you leave a bully in the midst of your lair, in terms of, if you think about a layer of people, they're not going to go away. They'll be there. And some people tippy-toe around the problem. It's really interesting. I was working with a group the other day and they said, oh, we don't really speak to the manager. Why? Oh, because we don't want to upset them. Why? Oh, because they've got a difficult time at home. Oh, I'm really sorry to hear that. How long has it been difficult? Oh, for about 20 years. So he's really badly behaved at work, but we don't want to do anything about his behavior at work because he's not good at home. Love compassion. Really, I do. I think that the world needs to be more compassionate. But at the end of the day, you cannot tippy-toe around the problem. It's a problem that must be dealt with. That, as I say, some believe if they ignore it, will go away. Others have tried so many times, but nothing changes. Here's the key thing for leadership. If you've got people in your team who are bullies, it's up to you to resolve the issue. And you can discipline them, you can counsel them, you can send them on a course, but at the end of the day, if they don't comply with what the rules are on the code of conduct you've got, out they go. So, for example, if it's a team like you're on the same level as them, and you're trying to say to them, look, we don't appreciate your behavior, and it continues, and you've spoken to your manager, and nothing changes, and you've spoken to HR, no change at all. If you have the opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, go, leave, find something that's a lot nicer for you, because this kind of behavior will destroy your soul. So bullies have problem number one, actually. This is a real problem, and it relates back to the sense of inadequacy. Bullies have no insight into their behavior very often and make others worthless. Not all the time. Sometimes bullies do it, manipulatively and with intention, but just give me a moment to describe what I mean. They are the bully from hell often because, you know why? Because they don't have the insight. And if they don't have the insight, you think to yourself, how on earth can you give them the insight so that they can actually realize what they're doing? And what you find with these people is they don't care what they say or do. And when they do bully you, generally it's one-on-one. So it's when you're at the photocopier and, it's just you and them. Generally they don't have others, but not always. Sometimes you'll have a group of people at work who bully you. And then if you've got a group of people at work who bully you, it's even more impactful on you as a person. They can be so toxic that people shrink. I literally have seen people look more fetal when a bully walks into the door or, round the corner. And often people shudder. Now, you cannot work in an optimal way if you are fearful and if you are anxious and if you're stressed all the time. You just can't do it. It's going to ultimately affect your health and continue to make you feel diminished. I love that word. Bullies make others feel diminished. You don't know how to defend yourself when you screamed at the table. And I'm not suggesting all managers and leaders do this. Of course I don't. Sometimes they don't scream and shout. Sometimes they do nothing. But they overload you with work and they isolate you. They'll put you, to work in the factory outside, way back in the mountains of whoop whoop. And the results are that people feel miserable at times, or all of the time. People don't thrive like they should. Often they accept second best, third best, fourth best. And what happens? We feel bad about ourselves. And they lose confidence in themselves, feel anxious and uptight, and hate going to work. So, if you have a look at this particular message that I've got on the screen, how on earth will these people work in their optimal way? They can't. They're stressed, they're unhappy, they're anxious. Solutions. So stand up to them to be assertive. Easier said than done, Karen. Yes, I know that, but bear with me at the moment. Report them to HR or the CEO, but the problem if the CEO is the bully, well, there's many things you actually can do. People have, actually spoken to the CEOs before and they've told them to behave well, and generally HR gets involved if the CEO is the bully. But if the CEO is not the bully, well, that's another story. But if the CEO is the bully, then get HR involved. If you're a union member, well, get your union member involved. I don't think it's a problem really in terms of stand up for yourself, ladies and gentlemen. If you allow the bully to take over your life and to control everything that you do, I promise you what will happen is you will continue to be diminished, as we said. Ask to be moved to another department. If, for example, it's your direct bully, is your manager, then just ask to be moved. And if you can't be moved or promise that you will be moved in a certain period of time, then make sure that happens. But if they say, no, there's no other vacancy, I encourage you to firstly, ultimately try and resolve it with this person by talking to them. But if you find, well, that's going to get me nowhere and what's the use, then go. No point staying, particularly, as I've said, because they're actually damaging your health. The longer a bully has power over you, the victim, the stronger the hold becomes. I think that's such a true saying. Problem number 2, bullies destroy self-confidence and self-worth. Why? Bullies often don't understand the impact of their behavior on others. They don't understand that their behavior attacks your self-confidence and self-belief over time. And if you've got $36 billion spent on absenteeism and work-related stress every year, bullies are costing organizations and the economy an amazing amount of money because of their bad behavior, which in turn makes people doubt themselves, not back themselves, let bullies tell them what to do, and they walk away feeling bad, but mostly about themselves. And then sort of saying to themselves, I get so angry with myself because I should have said something. So what are the solutions to some of these things? First and foremost, I would say get help. Don't stay there, ladies and gentlemen. Get help, whichever that is. Tell somebody to help you walk the road. So that could be a counselor, could be an HR manager, it could be a friend, it could be the union, it could be the CEO. Don't sit in bullying, because if you sit in bullying, it's just going to get worse. Get a life coach to help you to be assertive and stand up to these people once and for all. Learn more about bullying behavior and what to do about it or with it. and learn all about the skills to become empowered. Now, the screen here has got 5 different things that you can do, and it's not a case of, well, I'll do that tomorrow and learn it the next day. It takes time to become confident. It takes time to learn how to be assertive. But the more you're able to do it, the better at it you become. I'm telling you, the better you will be in your role and your life overall. Problem number 3, they break down teams and ruin organizations. People in the team look at the situation in horror. They don't want to come to work when they have a boss from hell. And of course then, well, there you go. Productivity and efficiencies go down the tubes. Then what happens? As teams lose productivity, people live in a culture of fear and insecurity. Good human capital walks straight out of the front door. People look for other roles wherever they can. You will never get the best when a culture is one of fear and blame. People get sick. Oh, here we go, workers' comp walks in the door, and often organizations are on their knees. Often organizations, are in a situation whereby they've got all of these compensation claims against them, that the actual overall sustainability of an organization is questioned. I'll give you an example. Working with an organization at the moment with, I think there's about 6,000 people in the organization nationwide, and they have 17, that's 17 workers' comp claims against them. 17 workers' comp claims against them. Now, what would you think that would be? Well, it's a range of things it could be. It could be the leadership. It could be the workplace culture. It could be the fact that they just don't like their manager. It could be they don't like the work that they're doing. But I'll tell you what I think works or doesn't work overall. If you've got 17 cases of bullying against you as an organization, the problem, ladies and gentlemen, lies in the executive leadership. So if the executive leadership has not got the culture of their organization under control, or has not got processes and procedures to get there in time, then they are the problem. They are not addressing the issue at all. And when you think about, so what can you do? What I want you to do is write down everything that happens in the situation where you feel as if you're bullied. Promise yourself you will do something about the situation. Never be alone with the bully. How many times do I say, do not sit in a conference room with you and the bully. Do not go and do your photocopying when the bully's at the copier. Don't be alone with them. And as I said earlier, involve HR or higher. Stand together strong, fast as a team if you can. So if you know that Billy's being bullied, then stand next to Billy. The difficulty, though, is if bully, in your team you've got bullying, then you've got to work out as a team how you're going to resolve the bullying. Maybe a code of conduct that we use often and we stand by could be a really great and valuable tool that's measured and monitored by the leader themselves. And I think the key thing with bullying is that bullying is not about you. It is about other people. It's about their insecurity and their feeling of inadequacy. Other strategies run like crazy. Stand and fight, not always a good way to go. Calmly make a stand. When you speak to me like that, I get really angry and I'm asking you not to do it. That's the assertive technique I teach all over the place. Change your attitude. So what I mean by that is, okay, there you go. Here comes Billy again. Billy's the bully. I'm going to stand up to him. So change the way that you feel about yourself and him. So when he speaks badly, just stand up to him and say, that's not necessary. And just keep on standing up to him time after time after time. You see, with bullies get some outcome. And the outcome they get is maybe the shock horror on your face, the power and control they feel about the way that, they've taken your power from them, that your power goes back to them. And ultimately what then happens is that if you change your attitude, quite often so do they. What I've noticed over many years of working with organizational bullies is this. The more you stand up to them, the less they will come into your parade. There you go. The more you actually learn assertive techniques to stand up to these people, the better off you will be. And they will leave you alone. They tend to move on to other people, which sadly is not what your intention is. But it would be great if those people learned the same skills I'm talking to you about now. But at the end of the day, if they leave you alone, well then, it leaves your life in a much more serene place. And organizations have a duty of care to their people around bullying. It can cost them dearly if they ignore or even condone bullying in every way. And they do. 6 ways to deal with bullies. Right, so don't back down, but don't fire up either. I often say he or she who stays calm wins. So stay calm if they're coming towards you. Think about your options and choose the best one you can. And as I said in an earlier slide, write everything down. Don't get over emotional. So when they come towards you, don't have, if you can, the look of fear on your face. Stand tall as if you can, and use simple logical language when they attack. Don't you dare speak to me like that. When you talk about me like that, I get really angry. I'm asking you not to. So very kind of concise and simple language is really the way that you need to go. As I said just now, make sure, that you're never alone with them ever, because often it escalates then. And the conflict between you and them can get worse, and they can become more dominating, and they can become more escalating. Deal with them in a consistent way. Stay connected with others. So network with people up the organization. I always say, and create allies. The more allies you've got around you and above you, the better off you will be. Set firm limits. When you treat me like that, I find it unacceptable. I.e., you don't roll over. You don't just say, well, that's not okay. You actually come back and say, what you're doing is not okay. I find it unacceptable. I'm asking you to stop. So you start being more assertive with them. So there I said 6 ways to deal with bullies, and I've given you 7. Oh, actually 8 even. Stand up for yourself and others. That's just really, I guess, recapping what I've said in the last 7. This is a wonderful CEO that I coached when I actually went and coached her for a while, and she was not that happy in her position. She felt that there was issues around bullying for her, and she's just the most phenomenal leader, really. She won the 2016 Australian CEO of the Year and is an absolute treasure. So what I like to do in organizations is to help you go from this to this, happy, great teams, loving being at work. And do you want to change your situation? Does your organization need help with, a culture of workplace bullying, or even dealing with one bully who needs sorting? Would you like to learn how to deal with the bullies at work and in life? This is just a webinar, so if you wanted to learn how to deal with them, you'd have to actually undergo some training, obviously. Want to really thrive? I always love that question. Do you want to really thrive? So if you would like to grab a pen, and you're welcome to have a calendar invitation with me for about 20 minutes to half an hour, you can book it on my time trade, which is there at QGY21, or you can just email us straight on. Happy to have a chat with you about bullying in organizations or personally. Welcome to follow me on LinkedIn, and there are the contact details. So, ladies and gentlemen, are there any of you who have some questions for me? So the question I've got here is an interesting one. What happens when you've got the whole executive team who are bullying each other? Well, that's a really good question. First and foremost, my question is, why are they bullying each other? Because if you've got a really strong CEO, that kind of behavior is not tolerated. But if you've got a situation where everybody's bullying everybody at that level, what hope do the people down the line really have? If you think about it, what hope do they have? If that's the example that's set as a role model, well, then you'll find fighting, and you'll find infighting, and you'll find unproductive and toxic teams down the organization. And if you can't see anybody doing something to resolve the issue, I say, you know what, go and look for something that's more appropriate for you. So thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. I really want to thank you for coming on to this webinar with me. A little bit ahead of time. I hope that you enjoyed it or were able to at least take something out of it. And really happy to speak to you next month. So until then, stay well, stay wonderful, and thrive on. Take care.